All right, so if you want to just like start with, I guess, like your background for sports and just like what got you interested in the first place and why you wanted to like pursue a career in sports from like, I don't know, just like whatever sparked it in the beginning.
Yeah, absolutely. Played sports growing up from before elementary school all the way through high school. Thought my sports days were over with after high school, and joined the military and all that. And in a freak accident, I ended up meeting a coach from the University of Cincinnati football program in 2010, and just kind of hit it off during like a weekend leadership workshop, and invited me to come on campus and come watch practice and see what everything was about. I said, sure, absolutely, why not? One thing led to another, and I'm there a couple days a week. Next thing you know, I'm there all the time, and just kind of taking on more of a coaching mentee type position. And that led on to the next year of me inquiring about a job at Xavier University, and they went ahead and gave me a job at their football program. And I went from being an assistant football coach to a recruiting coordinator, defensive coordinator, and then finished up my time as an interim head coach with the program. So spent some time in pro hockey and high school athletics, things like that, while pursuing higher education, some graduate work and things like that in sports. So it's kind of an odd way to circle back around to sport, but definitely excited to have it.
Um, was it always football for you, or did you have an interest before that, or has it been strictly football?
No, football. I got involved in football in the fourth grade and played from fourth grade all the way through my senior year in high school. I also played basketball from like fourth grade through ninth grade, but usually my heart was always set in football. So get involved in coaching in football. I mean, I was actually a pre-med undergrad, so my intentions were always to go on to medical school. But an opportunity in football presented itself at a high level, and so I took it and ran with it. So it was if it was a basketball situation, I don't know that I would have made the same decision. So
Gotcha.
So you're an athletic director or assistant athletic director now, and then you've also had experience in the university level. Can you explain any type of ethical situations that come up in either case and how they kind of differ?
absolutely, eligibility as far as academics are always a big question mark that comes up with um, what's the best interest of the school versus what's the best interest of the athlete, what's the best interest of the team, and and also academic standards. So it always comes down to with academic eligibility. If a person is just below the line, there's always those that are battling to try to get them above the line, trying to get teachers to um, add assignments, give extra credit, different things like that to try to inflate a grade. My perspective has always been to, the standard is the standard. It is either the athletes meet the standard or not, and if it comes to the detriment to the team, then that's just something we have to live with. College level, that's usually been the case as well. We have a lot more access to tutors and things like that to kind of help coach them along the way. But yeah, academic eligibility is always a tough one that you have to deal with, and then really with recruiting as well, you have to look at academic integrity and versus how that's going to mesh with your team and performance, things like that. So you're always trying to balance performance versus standards and things like that.
In high school, do you have to deal a lot more with the parents than you'd have to in college?
Absolutely. Particularly as far as funding goes, high schools, particularly the private schools, we're much more dependent on private funds from the parents, and we're in a pay-to-play school, where they have to pay at least some money towards the program to keep it afloat. So, and again, since I'm dealing with the administration side, not just coaching, I have to worry about grades and things like that. So when I start to see that their academic levels are going down, I immediately have to call the parents and work with that, as opposed to just coaching college level, where your primary responsibility, at least dealing with me, is strictly athletic based.
Do you think the ethics, like with the high school students, as opposed to like with college students, is there any differences you see there? You mentioned like just the grades, academic eligibility, as far as just like maybe with their personal lives, more so with their families and stuff like that. That you, since you're more involved at the high school level as opposed to college, like, differences across there maybe ethically.
I do hear and see a lot more because I spend more time with the high school athletes. I see them during the school day, I see them after school, et cetera, et cetera. So I hear more from their peers. I hear more about what they may or may not be doing, things like that, which creates your own level of liability. As far as ensuring their safety, security, and things like that. So there definitely is that difference. On the college level of things, though, there's also an expectation. You go to college, and it presents its own challenges as far as what they're exposed to, things like that. So there's always those concerns. But I think it's, I don't know that one's easier to work with than the other. One presents more problems, but there's definitely differences between the two worlds.
Do you think that since you are so close to them, do you like it more like a family atmosphere and a lot of dealing, I guess, with people than I'd say it would be with sales or at the college level when they're like a little more independent and you probably don't get that as much father figure or
Right.
mentor figure?
It's bittersweet, because you're dealing with, especially with high school kids. They're going through their own transitions, they're going through their own pushback phase, things like that. It's nice to be able to mold them at such an early age, and you do spend a lot of time with these folks, and so it's very, very rewarding. But it can be very challenging at the same time. The hours are very long, a lot of hours, a lot of days of the week. And when you want to spend Saturdays with your family, Sundays with your families, you're here with these kids. But again, it can be very, very rewarding. And college athletes, I had a great time with them because I did go above and beyond just our typical practice schedule. I dug in. I used to provide private tutoring sessions for a lot of our students, or our student athletes. And when I was a recruiting coordinator, I was able to take them from high schoolers to on into college. And I was only in Xavier for 2 years, so I was only able to see that one crop expand through 1 year. But I think if I was at the same program for 4+ years, that would have been extremely rewarding to make that transition from essentially childhood through adulthood. I think that would be really, really rewarding. But definitely, you have a much larger impact in high school, and you can definitely make a change in someone's life. They can get scholarship dollars through athletics or through academics or anything like that. But if you can make a huge impact at that age.
Since your school is part of the GISA, do you think that the school is more strict on rules and ethics than, say, a regular public school would be?
It's actually a pretty interesting concept. The GISA presents its own set of standards for different things, and our school in particular actually decides to go above and beyond voluntarily, which we tend to go to be more strict with academics and also with disciplinary issues, things like that, than our league itself. But since we are a private school, we do have a lot more leniency. We could be easier than, let's say, Clark Central here in town that's forced to follow certain government guidelines. No questions asked. We actually have a lot more flexibility, but we believe in a higher standard, and so we voluntarily put more strict restrictions on ourselves and higher standards on ourselves. So GISA versus GHSA, they pretty much mimic each other as far as rules and standards, but I think we try to go above and beyond what's already there.
Do you think that those standards, like say even in y'all's division, or even say if we think about like SEC and girly, are you for like schools and divisions coming together and making a higher rules and ethics for their student athletes?
Absolutely. I mean, for me personally, as a coach, I want my players to have the higher moral standard. I want us to have a higher academic standard. I want us to perform better at every level. When you're at the college level, let's take the SEC for example. I mean, you constantly have a spotlight on you, and if you're going to be the gold standard in one aspect of your program, it should carry across all platforms of your program. Especially when you're in such a high-profile school, a higher standard is always the better way to go, as opposed to getting yourself caught being lesser than standard or at the standard.
So I know you're really into football. With the ever-growing concern on concussions in the sport, especially in football, how have you had to take into consideration those regulations, and how does it affect your job, like right now in the high school level, but also when you're back at Xavier?
Absolutely.
Cincinnati?
The standards, unfortunately, have become more strict at the state level from the athletic associations, which is helpful because now there's no questions as to what, at least what I consider to be the minimum standard is. And, minimum standard, you have a head injury, you're done for the next week. Quite frankly, since I've been in high school especially, it's still considered high stakes. It's still, football is a very, very high stakes sport in both high school and college, but we reground players a lot of times for the entire season. If it's in the best interest of them, we ground them. They don't like it. We don't like it to lose a player, but when it comes down to it, we're worried about their long-term safety and well-being. When I was at Xavier, the same thing. When I had the ability to make those decisions, we look more long-term. If that means we lose a player for 6 weeks or 6 games versus 1 or 2, we always did it. So with the high school, we also work with youth programs. Any youth program that we allow to use our facilities, things like that, we make sure that they're using a heads-up football as well and using their standards. So we're trying to groom the next generation to maintain those higher standards and be more cognizant of head injuries and things like that.
Yeah, that's a good point because it takes a while to redo a generation of football, and concussions definitely shown that we need to start from the ground up.
Absolutely, absolutely.
With your experience with the Gwinnett Gladiators, I know you did mostly sales, right?
Yes, correct.
And so, were there any situations with fans and in the minor league hockey, how it all works, but fans and any specific instances in that scene being hockey and a little different from what you've been accustomed to. Any certain specific situations that you found interesting? I don't know, ethically or just in general.
The sales in general I've always found to be kind of bordering on unethical at times because you're trying to find how a person thinks, what their interests are, and you're trying to draw that out of them. So it's a manipulation tactic. So it always pushes that envelope. What's the best interest of the fan or the consumer, for that matter, and what's in the best interest of the organization and the salesperson. So when you're looking at sales, do they really need a full season ticket package when they're going to use 2/3 of it? So things like that. It always borders on an ethical line. But between different sports, I don't know if there was any major ethical differences or things like that. Again, my transition was from being a coach and a practical applicant of a sport to director of operations, where it was more of a managerial position of the organization. But again, the best intentions or the needs of fans or consumers are a lot different than those of the organizations at times. Organizations look at winning, but they're also looking at the bottom dollar when it's all said and done. Fans are there to see a winning product, things like that, but we still have to keep the doors open. So there's always that balance that you have to keep in place.
Which position have you done that requires more ethical thinking? Do you think the administration with the high school, coaching, or with the sales?
High school administration, without a doubt. I have my hands in every aspect of the students' school life and even after school activities, things like that. I almost have to think of them as a parent because I'm with them so often. I teach a little bit as well, so they may be in one of my classes. I have to worry about their behaviors and grades and things like that throughout the day. If there's any disciplinary issues, if there's any issues at home or with peers, so there's so many aspects of their lives I have to worry about. Time management. I'm at a really small private school, so a lot of these kids are playing multiple sports in the season. Some people are playing club soccer during fall, and they're also playing football, so they I have to worry about fatigue, injury. They may get injured playing indoor soccer outside away from the school. We don't necessarily know about it, so we have to continuously keep our thumb on the pulse and make sure that we know everything that's going on as much as possible. So definitely a lot more liability and responsibilities come along with being an administrator, I think.
How hard is it to juggle the other sports in high school and make sure you show each sport the attention, equal attention, so other sports don't feel left out, considering you're involved a lot with the football program?
Absolutely. This is actually, it was a point of contention when they decided to hire me, is that The head athletic director is the head football coach, and myself, being a football coach from the previous year, and then continue on with the program this year, there was already a stereotype that football gets everything. Football is the most popular sport, so therefore they're going to get the most money, they get the most attention. Our head football coach and athletic director does a great job at promoting the program, so when you see it, the newspaper, you see the website, things like that, there's always stuff about football, but not anything about our two-time state champions, Penn State boys and girls. So that was a big mission going forward, is to make sure that we not lessen the attention that football got, but in fact raise everyone else up. And we have 15 varsity sports, and that's really one of my primary focuses, is to make sure that everyone gets the attention they need. And we made it a huge emphasis this year, and we're wrapping up fall sports now, going into spring sports, and we really pushed media coverage and things like that for like volleyball, and cross country. We qualified as a team for state. And one of the biggest challenges we have is actually just getting interest in the other sports at the local level. We report everything to media outlets, and so we depend on them to, find out what's important, get it out there. But unfortunately, sometimes things get left out. But it is a challenge, especially time management. My on-the-field time with players in practice have dramatically decreased because I have to spend more time, helping to support volleyball or cross country, basketball, swimming, things like that. So it's definitely a challenge. And as someone who's never coached swimming, I've never coached these other sports, I don't necessarily know their needs. So I really depend on the coaches and their expertise to really come back, and the athletes. What is it we need? What do we need to improve? What's your perception of the program? What's your perception of the program in the grand scheme of the entire athletic department? Where do you guys feel like you fit in? What are the perceptions and understanding what those are, and are they real? Are they not real? And what can we do to overcome them?
So you said that a couple of you guys have the power to do that. So do you guys kind of? I'm sure it's probably impossible to go to all the sporting events. Is there ways that you guys try to maybe switch off or show your face at a certain amount of time each year? Or
yes, that's kind of the reason that they. I guess it's been 4 years now since they started having an assistant athletic director. No, I think the fact is actually only the second year we've done it, but that was part of the trade-off there, is that we had the athletic director who was expected to go to virtually every single athletic event. That's impossible. And we're not required to go to every athletic event, because sometimes it's just, you've got, maybe we have, I think, six athletic teams in the spring. And if you have 4 games going on one day, you just simply can't do it even with 2 people. So, we have to split responsibilities for every home event. So that's a good compromise that we have. Then if any team makes it onto a state or region level or a large tournament, we generally split the duties there as well. Our head football coach, has extra responsibilities during the fall, being that he is head football coach and athletic director. So really during the fall season, I pick up the majority of the athletic director duties, just to kind of ease the load for the head football coach. That is also his job as well. Now that we're transitioning into winter sports and spring sports, he'll start to take over some more of those. And whereas I was the athletic administrator on duty for all of volleyball and then half of our youth football league games and cross country meets, things like that. Now we'll split more duties with basketball and things like that.
tell us some daily duties you have with ADs. How much do you put into, say, keeping track of equipment for all the teams, facility management, and all the practice times, and making sure everyone has a place to do their respective sport?
Yeah, absolutely. The facility management, we try to take care of. Most of it's during the summertime, actually. But as seasons approach, sometimes there's a little bit of adjustment. So before each season starts, whether it be winter season or fall season, spring season, we go ahead and shore up any loose ends there. So that kind of lessens the load in season, because you don't want to have to worry about it. Hey, does basketball have a court available, for Thursday? You really don't want to do that. So we try to do everything in the summertime when nobody's around, and we can try to pre-plan for the entire season. As far as inventory, daily equipment, things like that, we have a couple TAs that come in, and they help us out with some of the mundane tasks, things like that. But on a typical day, we have to worry about any kind of new policies, procedures, behavioral issues, anything that comes up. Of course, maintaining constant communication with coaches, with parents, with students, faculty, staff, and administrators in the school. So if one of the athletes is acting like a knucklehead in class, then we need to make sure that on the after-school side of things, we take care of that. Today I spent probably 5 or 6 hours updating our entire school, their academic eligibility levels and things like that. So I have to go through every single student in the school and look at their grades and see where they fit at our status levels for academic eligibility. We have to maintain the daily budget in the grand scheme of our annual budget, things like that. We make sure we're ordering the right stuff, everyone has the right gear, everyone's healthy. So there's a lot that's involved. And right now we're building a new athletics website, so that's, of course, the task that falls on me as well. Media promotions, all you name it, it happens on a daily basis.
Yeah, it seems like definitely something that you wear a lot of hats and do different responsibilities.
Yeah, absolutely.
Who makes the decision on like weather conditions, like say in the middle of the summer and there's 2-a-days for football and whatnot? I'm sure there's regulations that you guys need to keep track of the temperature, if even there's a storm outside and lightning. Who makes those decisions, like to postpone a game or practice and stuff?
The standards are set forth by the GISA, which actually limit the Georgia High School, or the GHSA, and basically the ultimate decision comes down to the athletic director, but in our school policy and procedures, our principal, assistant principal, athletic director, or myself can all make that call. But the guidelines are set forth by the GISA, and but we again can hold higher standards. So if we feel that it's just absolutely unsafe, we don't want to put our athletes at risk, then we can always pull practice or something like that, or move practice indoors, or move to an early practice time another day possibly.
Speaking of the youth level, you have all the varsity and JV sports and stuff in high school, but who's all in charge of anything lower than that? Like say P, do you guys have 6th, 7th grade?
No, we are strictly a high school. That being said, we have a feeder middle school, which is St. Joseph's School, and but again, there's no real affiliation. It's just where we get the majority of our students from. But then we also make relationships with recreation leagues here in town, and travel teams, things like that. So those are really we would help them host games, host practices, tournaments, things like that. And that responsibility will generally fall between myself and the athletic director. And then we also have a facilities coordinator that takes care of facility rental, things like that. So really it's the three of us that sit down and determine, who can use our facilities and what kind of game schedules and things like that we put together to help support them.
Do you guys have like camps and stuff like that?
Yeah, absolutely. We host, sometimes individual sports will have their own camps. For example, football will have their own camp. Basketball every year hosts several different camps. But then we also have school-wide camps. We have, I want to say it was in July this year, we had like a week-long just general athletics camps where kids came in and they got to play football with, flag football with us, basketball, some baseball, soccer, things like that. Just get a wide array of different athletic events. But during the summertime in particular, we'll probably host 4 to 6 different camps on campus. And really for us, since we're a private school, we're trying to get people exposed to our campus and, let them know what we're about, as well as, helping to build up their, whether it be athletic knowledge or just skill sets in different sports.
So I know you said y'all try to go above and beyond the standards. Does the more elements of having a more religious background tied to your school, how does that affect y'all's programs and the
Sure.
school itself and the athletics?
Okay. We have certain pillars that we follow. Though we are a Catholic school, we're not associated with the Archdiocese of Atlanta, so we have a little some leeway as far as how we want to manage those aspects of our school. And we do have moral standards in place that maybe other schools would not have. We have a uniform standard that goes above and beyond what many many schools are required to do. And really, one of our biggest ones is actually public service. And so all of our students in the entire school, and especially our athletes, are required to do lots of different, it can be school service, it could be community service, it could be international service. And we send students and athletes down to Haiti to do work every year. So there's a lot that we do. It's all about the mind, body, and spirit, and trying to expand all of our students and athletes as a whole person. So that's really a major mission of ours.
Kind of to touch on like discipline again, and something we talked about in class was like kind of the role of a coach, like versus the role of a parent, and like how do y'all walk that line with disciplining an athlete until like it gets to the point where it's between the coach's job or is it the parent's job,
Sure.
and just like generally like just how you walk that line and determining like what's ethical, what's not.
Absolutely. Well, again, going back to we teach morals, which is not something that you do in a public school setting, for example, for the most part. And we also are given the capabilities of teaching the Catholic tradition, or teaching on the basis of a Catholic tradition when it comes to moral standards. So we are given a little more flexibility there. But really, it's what is it going to take to make sure that this student or this athlete is going to be successful? You certainly never want to step on the shoes of a parent. And there is a fine line there. But I think so long as you treat the family with respect and the student or the athlete with respect, and respect those boundaries that may be questionable. If you're dealing with an international student, they're of a different faith base. Obviously, trying to hammer home certain aspects that you may be given the authority to do, since it's a Catholic school, maybe that's not the best option because you don't want to belittle the family. So really, it's just you have to use common sense, and really experience helps as well. Just know what's worked in the past, what hasn't, and certainly what lines should not be crossed.
Have you ever seen any backfire from disciplining a student or student athlete, and like from a parent or maybe the fans themselves, like boosters, like maybe that someone has overstepped that of, and there's been like some backfire from it?
Yeah, myself, about a month ago. For one, you're always learning, and that's something you have to take every experience and go with it. For years, I've had great success going to a sibling and saying, hey, if you hear something from a peer or from a sibling, it's a lot different than hearing it from an authoritative figure, whether it be a coach, administrator, teacher, or parent, And so I've always went to siblings at times, siblings I had a great relationship with, and said, hey, look, so-and-so, little brother, little sister, older brother, older sister is, they're just not getting X, Y, Z, or they're not fulfilling their commitments or their responsibilities. Can you help me out here? And usually in those conversations, it's a lot more lax, almost like I'm a peer. Like I need your help. Help me help you. And particularly for those who I've had success with doing the same thing previously. And I've always had great success with it. And for some reason this year, it just didn't work out. And I went to a sibling, about a younger sibling of theirs, and said, hey, the behavior is it's got to stop, and I need your help. And I got the phone call from mom and dad wanting to know why I'm going to another student. They perceived the sibling as another student, not as a sibling, and wanted to know why I would go to another student to correct another student or belittle another student, is how they perceived it. And there's family issues at home between the two that I didn't know about, and so those are things that you try to use your best judgment. I used what was perceived to be a best practice for me, but it turns out it was a big no-no. And you live and learn. So I'll be a little more cautious next time when it comes to something like that. But you run into things like that all the time, and sometimes it's logical and sometimes it's not. That for me has always worked. And you live and you learn. So hopefully you don't do as much damage on the way.
So in that case, if you went to the original child and the message still wasn't getting there, what would be your next step?
The parents' recommendation. Well, I get the recommendations from the parents. What can I do to help out the situation? Because the situation was constant disciplinary issues, which for this student was they push back more. The more discipline that comes their way, the more they spiral out of control. And we didn't want to go that route. We've seen it at their previous school with this individual. So we looked at the parents. What has worked? What hasn't worked? How can we support you? Because we're here for the student. And the recommendation was just, come through us and let us brainstorm from there on what the best practices were. So, the end result of that was go to the parent, leave the sibling out of it. They agreed that constant disciplinary actions over moderate disciplinary issues wasn't necessarily the answer. If we go to the parents to kind of come up with a cohesive plan together, that was the best answer. So, we're willing to do that, absolutely.
I think we covered almost everything we had. See. Since we all are sport management students, we're all looking to pursue careers down the road. Do y'all offer any sort of volunteer with your teams, volunteering, or student managers, water boys, ticket takers, anything like that? Any sort of opportunity?
Always. Private schools are always looking for individuals. We actually have one of our coaches. He's a second year, maybe third year student here at UGA. In our department here in kinesiology, and he's done a great job for us. And he's been with us every day since the spring. So, and he's actually a paid coach, and so it's worked out really well. We also have volunteers. Basketball will have one graduate level volunteer who's getting into sport pedagogy, I believe. And so we're always looking for people. We're always looking for folks that are interested in sport or education, and even beyond that, management for that matter, because that's quite honestly where most athletic teams are lacking. It's not so much in coaching. You can find qualified coaches, but to find managers is very difficult to do, or administrators. It's very, very difficult to do. So we're always looking for people, and it's a great, great, great resume builder, particularly if you're looking at high school, level or secondary level athletics. It's always a great starting point. And then I can tell you from working in minor league hockey, that's always, if you have experience in any athletic program, the minor leagues love that. That automatically gives you an edge above everyone else.